Phonotactics. Phonotactics is an important branch of phonology. You may remember our discussion on syllabic structure and syllabification, right? When we discussed that languages do differ in allowing the consonantal sequences within a syllable, right? There are languages which allow CV. There are languages which allow CCVC, 2 consonants at the onset and 1 specific consonant at the end. And then there are languages which go beyond 2, right? And they allow like CCC, like 3 consonants in the onset and then 3 or 4 at the end, coda position. And English is one of those languages. Among the Pakistani regional languages, Pashto is one of the languages which allows more than 2 consonant clusters at onset as well as at the coda position level. But we need to explore the possibilities that what's the case in other languages, right? And even the Pashto syllabic structure is also underexplored, right? So we cannot say anything for certain that what's the the situation of Pakistani regional languages, right? But there are other languages which allow even more than 3-4 consonants. Like Polish is one of the languages which is spoken in Poland, and then also the Russian language, which allows more than 3-4 consonants, right? So languages do differ, right? And this, system within syllabic and this organization of segments at syllable level, that's called phonotactics, right? Like how are the phonological tactics allowed within languages? And it's an important branch of phonology, right? When we discuss the restrictions, right? The limits in a language, right? That how language within this important unit of a speech of the sound system, a syllable, that how it is maintained and how it is organized, right? So the experts of phonetics are required to describe the syllabic structures of languages. That's an important aspect of the phonological and phonetic studies, right? So the point is that how many combinations of phonemes are permissible, allowed in a specific sound system, in a specific language, right? And that is called phonotactics, right? Then experts also describe the rules within language, right? That how sounds are allowed, right? What sequences are allowed, right? Like stops are, allowed with fricatives or with approximants at onset level. And then what type of consonants are allowed at the coda level, right? So there are rules, right? And detailed study of the syllabic structures of the lexical data would reveal that what's the structure, the syllabic structure of a language, right? So that's called phonotactics when we think about the ordering of the phonemes in a syllable, right? And then we also think about rules, that what are those rules which are followed by languages? And then what are those restrictions which are the phonological rules of the language, right? So the discussion is basically on the basis of phonological rules, but specifically, limited to the syllabic structure, right? That how sounds take place, and then what processes are involved, what types of assimilations can take place, right? And how sounds are reduced, or like how they are then lengthened, right? So the discussion of such possibilities is called phonotactics. Phonotactics basically correlate with the syllabic structure, right? Like how are the syllables maintained and what structures are allowed. The consonantal structure basically, that how the consonantal clusters take place with what blends, right? What combinations are possible and how many consonants are allowed at margins, right? And similarly, since we have enough data from English, in English, 3 consonants are allowed at the onset level, right? And the examples are words like sprite or splite, right? Or stroke, right? So, sir is always the first one, and then the stop sound, and then the glides, right? Like the approximants, basically, right? So that's the structure of English, and 4 consonants are allowed at coda, right? So that's the phonotactics related to English. And within phonotactics, we give a detailed study of the syllabic structure, and then we come up with specific statements regarding the rules of the language, that what sounds are allowed and what combinations are allowed, what sequences are allowed, and such sorts of exploration is called phonotactics.